Hey all, welcome back to the Meaning Academy. I am here in my virtual studio with my good friend and partner in all things, Viktor Frankl, Dr. Daniel A. as in Adam France.
I
Hey, buddy.
feel as though my stature has been elevated. I'm your partner in all things, Frankel. That is spectacular and truly brings meaning to my life. Thank you, my friend. How you been?
I've been good. I've been jazzed after our last Your Search for Meaning. For anybody listening, we run is it bi-weekly or bi-monthly?
Every other week, I like to say, and then we don't have those questions.
Every other week, we get together with a group of meaning seekers here at the Meaning Academy, and we just do some deep dive into the work and world of Viktor Frankl, but even more important, to our own personal experience in life, discovering meaning, living with purpose, cultivating resilience, and just some awesome people having an awesome conversation. And this week was, well, simply awesome. So, what did we talk about? The topic was called "What Am I?" We try and keep it simple as a starting point, but then we go deep. And what am I is a profound question that we challenged ourselves on this call. So I'm going to start by giving Dan a little pop quiz, right? And the little pop quiz is, Dan, can you name all four of your grandparents? Yes.
Yes,
Okay. Can you name all eight, assuming there are eight, it has to be eight, of your great grandparents?
absolutely not.
Can you name one of your great great grandparents?
There's a document upstairs I'd have to go look at. Oh, wait,
So,
it's here. Yes, there is a document where I've highlighted that.
so the answer is no. You
Not
can't name.
easily.
Okay. Can you name a single possible ancestor, great great great? No. I mean, like, unless you have like Charles Darwin in your lineage, which you might, you're a brilliant dude. But the point is pretty clear, right? Like a generation, two generations, three generations at the outset, you're done. You're forgotten. You're as if you never were. And that is depressing. Is it
That
not?
just fueled so much existential angst, man.
But wait, before you turn that dial, that's where we're going with this conversation and what Dr. Frankl and, spiritual traditions of all kinds have challenged us on for millennia. People have been wrestling with this since the beginning of time. If that is only sad, if it's true that I am the beautiful flesh suit that you are looking at right now, Dan, that's all I am, then yeah, it's depressing. But what if you are more than the flesh suit? What if underneath it there is a Dan that was, that is, and that will be? And it isn't dependent on great, great, great grandchildren remembering you. And it isn't dependent on, your achievements and accomplishments, as great as they may be. And that was sort of the nature of the conversation. What does that do for you, Dr. D?
So much, because what you just summarized in those few seconds was literally an hour of beautifully intense conversation just a couple days ago. And I'm reminded at the starting question that so many of us are asked in life, right? Who are you? Which we automatically take to, what do you do? I'm a psychologist, I'm a therapist, I'm a faculty at the Viktor Frankl Meaning Academy. And you challenged us to go deeper. Well, I'm a father, I'm a husband, I'm a mother, I'm a daughter, all of those kinds of things. And you challenged us to go deeper. And through that conversation, we got to so many of those powerful existential answers to the existential questions we all have. When you bring up this idea, this frightening look, man, I'll be honest, that scared me. You'll be forgotten. Well, why am I here? Why am I doing this work? Why do I waste my time with such a beautiful human being if it doesn't matter in a couple years, in 50 or 100 years? Well, because there's more to that. There's more to life than that. There's more to me than that. There's more to you than that.
It's quite sad. You're right. If we measure it by our, look out your window in our society, and you are what you do. I mean, that's why, especially true with guys, I notice this more than with women. If you say, hey, I'm Dan, the next thing you ask is, what's your name? They tell you your name, their name. And then the next question is always, what do you do?
Mhm.
And the response from guys is almost invariably, I am a banker, I am a lawyer, I am a teacher, I am a fill in the blank. And we have just, this is Viktor Frankl's idea of reductionism, reducing. We have reduced the entirety of the beauty of Daniel A. France down to therapist, or however you're going to fill in the blank. That's it. That's all that this person, this soul is in front of me. And unfortunately, I think that translates in so many ways in our lives today.
Absolutely. We live in a reductionist society that wants to identify us by a label. I talk about that very often when it comes to clinical diagnoses, right? People, we talked about that in your search for meaning in our meaning seekers meeting this week. When we have something going wrong, when we don't feel right, when we're mentally, emotionally, or physically ill at ease, or ill or unhealthy, we go to somebody, we say, tell me what's wrong. And we want a one word or a few words diagnosis. And when we were talking about that, one of our participants shared a bit of his history and said, I came down and the doc said complex PTSD. Dude didn't even get 2 words. He got a word and 4 letters to describe this experience he was enduring. That was the consequence of 10 years of difficulty. And we talked like what a reduced just diagnosis of what he had experienced. And we talked about that yes, we need that label sometimes, but we are so much more. And our illness, our struggles, our suffering is so much more. And that's what brings us to the defiant power of the human spirit.
Yeah, and so many psychiatrists, therapists, doctors are just guilty of starting off on an unhealing foot, right? They're healers. But the moment you look, it's not true. When somebody says to me, I am depressed, it's not true. Now, you may be experiencing depression, but in this very moment, usually when I'm talking to people, I say, but right now, I don't care about what happened an hour ago or what's going to happen an hour from now. Right now, it seems to me like you're connected and we're really jiving here. Yeah, that's true. So is it true that right now you're depressed? No. Well, then you're not depressed. Maybe in an hour you'll cross that bridge, but right now you are more than that diagnosis.
Yeah, that brings us to a lot of what we talked about, the idea of being present in your life, being present in the moment, mindfulness practices, these things that help us to refocus to who we are and what we're doing in the moment can be so critical to true healing and to moving forward in a healthy and powerful way.
And it doesn't have to be just like clinical diagnoses. It can be, I am a failure. I deal with so many men at midlife who say, I'm a failure because I haven't hit the $1 million mark, or I've worked my ass off and I have no money in the bank, or whatever it is. And then we start getting into, is that true? I mean, how do you say that when you have a spouse who loves you, or kids who respect you, or friends, or community, or faith, or whatever? And we build from there, right? Because so many people, including myself, I do this too, craft a reality around that missing piece, around that, my life is 80% good. And I start building my narrative around the 20% that sucks. And that's my reality.
But it's not. So what do we do about it, B? It is the reality you've created, but in reality, objective reality, when you have those people that care about you and love you and need you and want you around, when you have that job that you can go to and be creative, but doesn't define and identify you, when you have meaningful experiences, but you focus on the 20% of what you are not, what do you do about that? Because I feel like in our times, in our culture, too many people, right, are not depressed or anxious or suffer from PTSD. They are living focused on a meaningless existence. They are living existential angst in this existential vacuum that we've created. What can we do differently?
And this is where I come back to Frankel when I'm working with people of get a better why, right? Because he or she who has their why can endure anyhow. And that's my experience, is your why isn't big enough. I'll give you an example. I was counseling somebody a couple of days ago who lost a loved one. I would never deny that they're in grief and suffering. However, our conversation hinged upon you need a bigger why. It can't simply be to survive. Now, that's a starting point, and I want you to survive. But the rest of your life can't be surviving without your spouse. You got to live, right? And we got to talk about something bigger than what was lost. She said to me, "Are you saying I should replace my beloved husband?" I said, "You'll never replace your husband. He's indispensable, irreplaceable. What we have to do is live for yourself. We have to live for him. We have to live doubly. We have to love more fiercely." And our conversation started to get bigger. And by the end, she was motivated by something more. And that's to me where we got to get back to, right? To figure out who we are and why we're here.
And when I hear you say something more, I go right to the great teachings of Dr. Frankl. What is that more? That is finding something greater than yourself, being in service of something greater than yourself. We call it self-transcendence, stepping outside yourself to help others or to truly love another human being. And I believe we all have that ability, whether it's somebody close to us, our spouse, our partner, our children. And maybe if we're not fortunate enough to have a partner, or spouse, or children, there are people in this world direly in need of our love and appreciation and empathy and compassion. So
Yeah.
it's really theoretically a damn easy fix.
I forgot the clergy, I think he was a Christian theologian, forgot who he said it, and we've talked about it before, but instead of asking, who am I? You start with, whose am I?
Mm-hmm.
Whose am I? And that gets you into what you're talking about, right? Which is self-transcendent. I am not here for me and me alone. Yeah, like I got to have a self, I got to be centered, but that's a starting point, right? If it's just me sitting around contemplating who am I, you just spin around and around and around.
I believe in the teachings of logotherapy and multiple resources that spinning around and around and around and focusing on oneself, I believe is called navel gazing. Is that not correct? Staring at one's own belly button, looking for the meaning of existence. So we live in a world that tells us to focus on me. And if you focus on you, if you focus on the self, everything's better. But that's not working. It's not working to focus internally on the self. We have to step outside ourselves in service of others, in service of an idea greater than ourselves.
And that's the interesting irony that if I want to understand what am I can't focus on what am I, right? It's like what Viktor Frankl says: happiness cannot be pursued; it only ensues. Right? What am I? You can't pursue it; it ensues. When you're in love, when you're self-transcending, that's when you realize what I am. Right? Like I know that feeling. You know that feeling. When I'm focused on my kids and helping them find their way in life, right? I don't have to ask what I am. I know what I am, right? Whatever that thing is. I mean, it's more than just being a father. Like that's a way you can find it.
Yeah, I think I go back to this idea that, you and I are so privileged and blessed and fortunate that we spend our days in service of others. Yes, it's part of our job and it also supports our families, but it's also truly going outside ourselves to focus on somebody else's life, happiness, healthiness, and meaning in their lives. What about other people out there that aren't engaged in one-on-one contact with helping other people? What can they do to step outside themselves in self-transcendence? I was going to argue that before I even asked you the question, but I'll ask you the question first.
Nah, I disagree with you. I love you and I disagree with you. I think any interaction is just as meaningful as what you and I do. I was at the Home Depot the other day, and I swear to God, I met like a prophet in a orange apron. Like he was an old man who, I don't know if you ever read Dan Millman's Peaceful Warrior. He was the character Socrates in the book, who he's like an emissary of the divine. Like this dude is enlightened, And we went from talking about nuts and bolts to essentially the meaning of life without talking about it. And I felt seen. I felt heard. I'm like, don't tell people you're here because nobody will come to me as a counselor and guide. And it works at the freaking Home Depot.
And that proves my point. As I'm asking you that question, I'm like, no, you're so full of yourself, Franz. You're not all that blessed and privileged. Everybody, regardless of what you do, has that opportunity to bring meaning, to bring a little bit of Frankel, to bring a little bit of that spirit to other human beings. Dr. Frankel tells us it's not the job that's important, it's how you go about doing it. It's how you bring yourself to that job and serve others.
So come back to the question, what am I? So what am I? What are you?
Well, B, I'm mind, body, and spirit. Soma, psyche, and nous.
You better hope it's more spirit than body.
Ouch, man. Hey, look, you hadn't even commented on today's cardigan that it was worn with intent, but I got to tell you, I haven't seen anybody wear a members only jacket in at least 20 years, but bro, you're killing it.
I'm rocking it. It's Patagonia for the record. For our
That
listeners,
is members only. I don't care what
for our
label's on it.
listeners, I want proof on video. It is not members only, but I do have parachute pants on. Okay. So what am I? Mind, body, spirit. I mean, that's true. Like I want to like steer clear a little bit from esoteric, because Dr. Frankel's philosophy incorporates body and mind. Like it's not nothing, right? The flesh suit, the physicality of who I am, it's part of who I am. You know, there are traditions and systems out there, especially a new agey kind of a thing, that denies the body, right? That says it's not important. Or there are religious traditions that say the body gets in the way of, you know, your purpose here, and it can become dirty and evil. And from at least a logotherapeutic perspective, you have a body, and your body is real, and it's part of who you are. It's just not all of who you are.
So then that would argue we are our spirit, but we have a body.
Yeah. And I think, again, body is partially who I am. It's just not the true, right? The true is, 2 + 2 is always 4 under all circumstances. The true me can't sort of be here and then sort of be gone. So, like we're looking for the true you, and the body is partially you. The mind is partially you. My mind is pretty solid, but someday it might not be. And am I still me? Even if, or is your loved one who has dementia or Alzheimer, are they still in there somewhere? And I think anybody who's been with a loved one who has Alzheimer's, it's not totally them the way I knew them, but there's still a them in there.
And that's their spirit as we see it, as we teach it, as we've learned it. And that idea that our mind and body will fail us, right? They may be failing us now. Again, you wear a members only jacket, I can tell your mind's failing, but there are different ways our bodies will break down. We do things, substances, extreme sports, unextreme sports, different ways that we harm our bodies. Our minds become frail, but our spirits are always there. Our spirits do not become ill. They may become sullied by the acts of the body and the mind. They might become dirty by the existential anxiety of the world around us, but our spirits are always there as who we are.
And I think that's partially why we need to be in alignment with our body. When you're overweight, I've been overweight, when you're eating too much sugar, when you're not getting enough sleep, when you're neglecting your body, you start to get out of alignment with that nous, with that spirit. It's harder to connect. You don't need scientific studies. We know this. When I don't get enough sleep, I have a hard time connecting to my spirit. So part of it is sort of getting in alignment with body, mind, and spirit. And that's really, I think, the work that, we do with our clients, we do in our own lives, we're doing it at the Meaning Academy, helping people align that trinity.
Absolutely. And That's what we talked about this past Wednesday. In today's very brief podcast, sorry we're so brief today, folks. We actually spent the better part of the beginning of the hour rehashing how to improve your search for meaning in the Meaning Academy. But I guess what we want to leave you with as we kind of review the work we did about what am I, who am I, where am all these questions, right, comes down to mind, body, and spirit. How do you take care of your body so that you're aligned with your spirit? Because just as much as you can do unhealthy things to your body, choosing to do healthy things, exercise, eating well, meditation can align you with your spirit. How do you take care of your mind in anxious states, in depressed states, in post-traumatic states? How do you return it to health? These are the things we work on at the Viktor Frankl Meaning Academy, in your search for meaning. But we also want you to get something from this podcast. So get out there, take care of your body, take care of your mind, recognize your spirit. And if it's sullied and dirtied from the existential angst of the world we live in, what are you going to do to clean it off?
I'm gonna end on my side with a tool that I really believe in. I use it in my own life. I use it with clients and friends, and that is, I call it your North Star, right? Because the North Star is all you need to navigate the seas, as so I'm told. If you don't have a map, and you know the North Star, you can always orient yourself home. And we need a North Star. When we're going, I just had this conversation with one of my kids. They're in high school. It's a tumultuous time. Friend groups are so in flux. If you put your North Star on friends in high school, you're screwed, because it's always moving and you lose your way. And I said to my daughter, find your North Star. Like, it's got to be something that was true, that is true, that will always be true. And, she found her North Star, and we talked about it. And she's now coming back to that, to orient herself. For her North Star is just going out into nature. So whenever she goes out into nature, it's hard to explain. She just finds her way back to her. Right. So I challenge our listeners, what's your North Star? And put your attention on that when the circumstances are beyond your control, because as Frankl taught, they're always beyond your control.
Absolutely. We can choose our attitudes, but not our circumstances. I love that idea of North Star, because it ties right back to something you said earlier, my friend. If you're struggling to find your North Star, you need a bigger why, because your bigger why is definitely that North Star. Your bigger why, what you serve that's greater than yourself, your self-transcendence, the loved ones that you truly love for who they are and not just who you want them to be. All of these things can be your North Star. But if you're struggling, if your spirit, it feels weak, if your body is damaged, if your mind is failing, find your bigger why.
And your North Star can't be your cardigan. It's just not big enough why. I'm sorry, brother. I'm sorry.
I love you, my friend. Always a good time. I know you've got big things to do today. Hey, if you want to find out more about your search for meaning, please, we would love to have you. We're having a great time over there. Always have room for more. Check out themeaningacademy.com to find out what we're up to. Look at our next Meaning Seekers meeting. And as always, live your life with meaning, purpose, and resilience.
Take care.